Welcome to the Embody Your Natural Masculine Summit. And I'm Renee, I'm your host for these days, and I'm a love, sexuality, and embodiment coach. And I organized this summit in the hope to inspire you to connect deeper with yourself, with your authentic self, to connect deeper with your body, with what is alive inside you, and to connect with what you desire, what you feel, what you, and but also with your deeper core, your excuse me, with your inner wisdom, your inner power. And yes, I also really like to inspire you to really connect deeper with your body and movement, not just move your body, but really connect with it. And to talk about that subject, I have a speaker with me today, and that is Billy Morgan. So welcome, Billy. And thank you for being
Hello.
here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's see, because now my voice is like stopping. All right. So to introduce Billy Morgan, you are a natural movement and lifestyle coach. And you believe that being healthy shouldn't be a chore, and that the modern ways of looking after our health don't really serve us in body or in mind. And you believe that variability is the key to a healthy movement practice and a healthy life, and that repetitive gym workouts lead to injuries. Oh, and I think I lost half of my sentence.
And I think it's and boredom.
And boredom. Okay, perfect. Well,
They definitely do.
Yeah, so that repetitive gym workout leads to injuries and boredom. And that. So, welcome again. And to
Hello.
start, I would love to hear a little bit more about your own movement journey and how you got to the place where you are now.
Yeah. So I've been the kind of person that's moved for most of my life. So I find it easier to move because I've been doing it my whole life. But I noticed that when I was younger, I used to just enjoy playing outside, running around, climbing on things. And then I got into sport and grew up doing a lot of sports, which I really enjoyed. But then once I reached, I used to climb competitively and I used to do a lot of sports until I reached about the age of 16 and I left school. And suddenly everything just started to fall apart. My body wasn't really working very well because I'd pushed it a bit too hard when I was young. And at the same time, the only options as an adult to be doing exercise, or what felt like the only options, were going to the gym. And so I'd go to the gym and I'd get into it for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and then I'd get bored again and fall off the bandwagon. And I'd often also push myself too hard in that time period or not enough, and either see no benefit or get injured. And the same with diet. I would, I wouldn't ever say I put on loads of weight, but I would spend ages not caring about my diet at all, and then yo-yo into calorie counting to insanity, and then back into not caring at all.
Yeah.
Until it started off when I discovered parkour.
Parkour. Yeah.
And I don't know if you know what parkour is.
Yeah, like the outside on the streets.
Outside on the streets, jumping over walls.
Yeah.
So when I discovered parkour, because I met a bunch of adults that do parkour, it reminded me that there is more to movement than just the physical aspect of doing the movement. Oh, I'm going to lift a weight up and down and up and down. I'm going to sit on a machine and go while watching a TV. And I realized that it's something which I somehow forgot, even though I did it for my whole childhood, but exercise isn't something that you have to do just because you have to do it. It's something that you can do because you want to do it. And essentially, I spent a lot of my teenage life being a video game addict, and the sport was one of the only things that drew me out of that world and got me to go outside and do things. So then as an adult, when I got a job, what happened is I slowly just fell more and more into spending my time staring at a computer and playing games, and less time exercising, because exercise was boring and exercise wasn't something that engaged me. and I didn't really feel connected to my body at all. I felt, well, as we like to put it, a head on a stick. Like I was just didn't really have a body there that I had to worry about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found parkour, and then from there, kind of everything moved on step by step. I just learned more and more about my body. I recognized that moving in that way made me feel good. It made me feel good physically because it made me feel healthy, but then it made me feel good to do it. I felt better every single time I went out for a session. So yeah, I moved on from parkour, and I still do parkour, but then I started finding other aspects of movement that I find enjoyable, and I've kind of built my life around trying to fit in movement and enjoyable ways of movement as much as possible. And now I'm trying to help other people find that same joy, and also a reason to move, not just they're doing it because they feel like they should be healthy, but a reason like, oh, I want to move because I have a goal, or I want to move because it's something that I do for myself.
Yeah. And yeah, you
No,
want
I didn't know if I had anything else to say. Carry on.
No, because you had like to have a goal. What kind of goal? Because it's not, when you're speaking, like it's not around having to do movement. What kind of goals do you have now?
So I have a few goals, and I think it obviously, the goals obviously vary person to person. So
Yeah.
I realized that one of the things that I really enjoyed as a child is that I really enjoy competitive sport. It isn't for everyone, but for me, I really enjoy it. So I realized that for me to stay very fit, the level of fitness I want to stay at, I need to set myself a goal, which has been a struggle over this last year because basically all competitive competition is gone.
Yeah.
But until then, I'd always set something in the future to say, I would like to compete in that event. I would like to compete in this event, to force, not to force myself, but to make myself want to do it, because I didn't want to turn up to that competition. And then, because it happened in the past, I've turned up at a competition and I've not been as fit as I wanted to be, and then or as skillful, because again, movement isn't all about being fit and strong. It's about being skillful and being able to move well. And I've got to competitions before and gone, oh, I'm not in my best condition. I'm not the best me I can be, essentially. And gone, oh, well, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
But then as far as reasons to move as well, there are other reasons to move, because one of my other reasons that I move is because I really like the phrase be fit to be useful. So to me, it's part of my personal philosophy to be able to be useful to other people. So I practice self-defense, and I practice moving in ways which in a gym would be completely inconceivable, because I realized that in the real world, you can't always rely on, there are, you find them, there's plenty of videos on the internet of people having to lift cars, not all the way up, but deadlift a car off a person because they're being crushed underneath. And it actually happened to me, where a car crash happened outside of our house. And it wasn't just me, it was me and a few other people. But basically a kid got run over on a bike and got stuck underneath. And we had to go out at the front of the house and lift the car to the side so that he could get out from underneath the car. And it wasn't a life or death situation. He probably would have been fine, but I felt better knowing that I could actually contribute to that moment, and that my body wasn't in such a state that I was incapable of helping that person.
Yeah, you were capable of
being that person that can, being.
Actually do something in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and he turned out okay, or the boy that was...
he ended up completely fine, actually. He just basically got up and walked around a bit and cried, and then he was only maybe 10, but then afterwards he just was fine, which was good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, but I think it brings you, the other thing is that being physically and mentally well, I think brings you a confidence, and obviously they're both important, but obviously being one of the parts that I think a lot of people are very much working on their mental health. But then if you're physically well, it does bring you confidence to know that you can deal with the situation if anything happens. Because I don't know, obviously it depends on the person, but I've lived in some poor areas, some areas that have a lot of crime, and you avoid going out at night. You avoid going out when it's a bad time to be around places, but it does make you feel a lot more confident knowing that if something did happen, well, the best thing you can do is run away. But to know that I can run, and I can run fast because I've practiced.
Yeah.
You don't need to fight, but if you can run away really quickly, you're going to be a lot better off than somebody that can't.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel more confident that, oh yeah, I can just run.
Yeah.
And they're probably not going to get me.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you also feel that this feeling of confidence is not only in like
those situations, dangerous situations. Yeah.
But also flows into the rest of your life?
I think so, definitely. I think when you feel confident in any situation, it kind of spreads out. When you have a moment of confidence, it kind of fills you with confidence. And then that is useful in other moments of your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think so. I think it, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I don't know how to expand from that. I definitely feel though that the more fit I get, the more confident I feel in my body. Also because I feel good, I don't look like a model, but I do like the look of my body as it is now because I try to take care of it.
Yeah.
My aim isn't to look really buff and really ripped or anything, but I do feel comfortable in my body as it is now. And I think I did feel less comfortable when I had more weight. And I know that's sometimes a bit controversial. People, talking about body positivity, but I feel more comfortable in my body when I feel fit.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine that it also brings in another level of energy inside yourself. And yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. You feel that your body is capable of things instead of something that is a little bit in your way or yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And so you mentioned a little bit earlier that you were used to pushing your body in movement and in competition. And like the way you move now, is that you're not doing that anymore, or you have a different way of using your body?
So I have a different approach now because I still like to be competitive. Like I said, I still enjoy competition, but I've now learned a lot more about the body and how it works. So what I used to do is I would just push it and push it and push it until I'm basically collapsing, which is terrible, especially for young people. Adults can kind of get away with it for a certain period of time. Children can't, because while children recover very quickly, they can also get damaged permanently. And I have a few problems that I'm still not sure if I'm permanently going to have problems or if they're ever going to go away. Not major issues, but aches and pains that I don't know if they'll ever go away because of how much overexertion I put in as a young person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I realize that there is a way of balancing being very strong and very skilled, because I know one thing I found is that the way I train is to try and be as variable as possible and try to do as many different things as possible so that I'm never overworking one area. And then to also train my skill to a very high level, because skill doesn't require you to overexert yourself constantly, because you don't have to, you literally don't have to force your muscles to burn and feel horrible. You can do things that are, like I said, skill-based and challenge you in other ways. And what I found is that in competition, there are people that probably put many more hours of physical training in than me, and they're not, they often are stronger than me, but not so much stronger than me that make a difference. And because I work primarily on skill and my movement and variability so that anything that I encounter isn't an issue, we're on even footing, even though they put a lot more physical effort into what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of competition are you doing now?
So I still do some climbing competitions, rock climbing. Yeah. And then I've also been in and around I don't know if you know Ninja Warrior.
No, I know the term, but I have
no. I think there is a Ninja Warrior in the Netherlands now. It's actually more popular than in the UK, but it's essentially a short, very difficult obstacle course.
Yeah.
It's a TV program, but I don't care about the TV program, but I care about the sport as a fun thing. It's basically a short, maybe 100 meters or less obstacle course. It's very difficult. And the challenge is to get through obstacles and get to the end. And then if everyone gets through it, or a lot of people get through it, it's getting to the end fastest. So yeah, for me, that's one of the other things that I'm interested in, which is very variable because you just don't really know what kind of obstacles there are going to be. And also I'm starting to get into the longer, they're called OCR, they're just called OCR, obstacle course race, but they're longer forms. So they're 1 mile, 5 miles, 10 miles, kilometers, I don't know. but
Yeah.
but yeah, same kind of thing, obstacles, but then you have to do a bit of a running in between and challenges. And I might in the future do some CrossFit, I'm not sure. But I also like with competition, I don't like to stick to one thing either, because I don't really find that brings me joy to just really focus on one thing. I think that it often makes me feel stressed. Feel stressed that I have to focus on this one thing. Whereas at some point, I wouldn't say I get bored of things, but at some point I go, yeah, I've done enough of this. I'm just going to go try something else.
Want something new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So you said about skill training. You talked about that.
Yes.
Just a little bit ago. Like, what is that? How is that different than just doing an exercise?
Yeah. So obviously, I guess we should define an exercise first.
Yeah.
What is an exercise? Exercising, and this kind of comes into something I want to talk about anyway, which is the difference between exercise and movement.
Yeah.
Exercise, I think, as far as what's coming here, pop-ups on my screen, gone. Exercise is something that we do in the modern world to make our muscles work. And the only real goal is to make our muscles do a thing so they get stronger or bigger, or maybe so we lose weight.
Yeah.
Movement, and that's where I kind of talk about skill training, is more about challenging the body to do things that it previously maybe wasn't capable of. Not always, actually. Movement is broader than that. For instance, what movement could be make sure you get up your desk multiple times a day and have a little walk around.
Yeah.
But as far as movement training goes, it's more about challenging yourself. It doesn't mean that they don't have to be physically difficult. It doesn't mean the exercise doesn't have to be hard. It can be very hard, but it's to try and add the extra elements in. So for instance, you could do a squat, you do squats, but you could do a squat while balancing on a beam, which would make the physical exercises still be just as difficult. But while you're standing on the beam, you're balancing, and that adds an extra element. You could do balancing beam. You could balance on a beam and do one-legged squats, which then adds even more difficulty. You could, which I have done, you could do one-legged squats on a beam while juggling. And then it gets basically impossible because I can't do that yet. I can do about 3 juggles and then I fall, then everything falls over. But it's fun while it lasts.
Yeah.
And you can keep adding these elements. You can keep adding extra things. You could do the monkey bars, but then you could do the monkey bars while trying to hold something between your feet. You could do the monkey bars, but try to skip a monkey bar. You could do
what is a monkey bar?
Anything. And this is where the kind of philosophy comes in. You have to try to work out where your end goal is and what you want. Do you just want to have fun? Because if you just want to have fun, then you can just do things that make you feel good.
Yeah.
If you want to reach an end goal, then you can do things that are more relevant to what you're doing. I do parkour. I like to jump around on walls. So I practice lots of weird, awkward ways of jumping around on walls. And I've got some balance beams in my house that I've built. So then you can, when we're in the kitchen, me and my girlfriend, when we're doing stuff in the kitchen, we're often just balancing around on balance beams throughout the day, which means that we're always getting that extra bit of movement into our lives.
Yeah. Nice. Yes. So that, the things you talk about now, those kind of movement skill trainings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really have like a lot of variety in the movement.
Yes, as much as possible.
Really a big difference between normal movement in like what you're doing in the gym or when you meet even when you're running.
Definitely. I think
I
think the gym is a strange thing. It's like a thing we've created to try and fill a void. We have a void in society, which is people at some point, I would kind of say around the 50s, people kind of stopped having to exercise in their life. Because there's a term that people talk about, and it's called someone is farm strong. And to be farm strong is essentially when everyone's got their own farmstead, when everyone's growing their own food and got their own animals and they're working on their own land, people didn't need to exercise because life was physically difficult in the sense that you would have to move to live.
Yeah,
Not obviously by the
physical challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, prior to the 50s, some people
Yeah.
were living in cities, but it was since the 50s, it's only got more and more obvious. More people, more time watching TV, computers began to exist.
Mhm.
People sit in front of their computers all day. This year is the prime example of
that.
people sitting in front of their computers all
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So the gym kind of came around as a way of trying to resolve that, a way of trying to get physical activity back into people's bodies.
Yeah.
But and it's true for all exercise, it is all just a simulation in a sense. It's a simulacrum of what we would naturally be doing as a tribal person, as a Neolithic caveman. It's all just a kind of simulacrum, which we're trying to find something that we've lost. And I think the gym was a good first step. It was a good practice run.
Yeah.
But I think now we need to move a bit further forward and go, okay, we know now that it's a bit too limiting. It's not enjoyable for a lot of people. Some people love it, but it's not enjoyable to most people. It's not on its own, it's not particularly good for your body to just do the exercises that a gym provides to you. I also think that gyms, because they are laid out for you, there is a squat rack, there's a bench pressing area, and then there's all these machines. You get into a situation where you're deferring your own power essentially to the gym. You are letting the gym decide what exercises you should do instead of deciding what's best for you, which I think leads to everyone kind of being the same or looking the same. But to some degree, everyone that kind of goes to the gym and lifts weights looks roughly the same because they're all doing the same thing. And because they don't know that there's anything else to do, they're all aiming for the same thing.
Yeah, and you also said like it's not actually really good for your body. Then you're talking about things like you're doing like the same repetitive movement over and over again. That creates the same movement, using the same muscles, using the same movement in the joints, and that creates wear and tear and overload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a good example of that would be, for instance, let's say you're carrying something. So in the gym, you'd go and do squats, weighted squats. You put a bar on your shoulders and you go stand under the squat rack. And these are, I say this, a lot of people don't even get to that point. A lot of people just use the machines, which is even one step back from that. But let's say somebody uses a squat rack. They go, they put it on their shoulder and they squat down until their knees are 90 degrees and they stand back up straight again. And they do that 6 times and then they take a break and they do another 6. In the real world, the reality of what your body would be doing is you'd pick something up. So, I mean, let's go back to cavemen, essentially. You've just killed a deer. You've just shot a deer with a bow and arrow that you've made yourself. What are you going to do now? Well, you're going to have to pick it up. Well, you're not going to it's not going to be loaded on a bar for you and like perfectly weighted to your shoulders. You're going to have to get down on the floor. You're going to have to get your arm underneath it and lift it up. You're going to have to get it onto your shoulder. And then for the rest of the journey back, you might be able to sing it over both shoulders, but you're going to have this kind of awkward waddle that you're going to have to do all the way home. Yeah. And it's not balanced. Yeah. It's wonky. I've actually carried a deer. It's not easy. I didn't kill it myself. It was roadkill.
That's good.
I don't know what the laws are in the Netherlands, but in the UK, if an animal gets run over by someone else, you can't run it over yourself. But if somebody else runs over an animal, you can then take it with you and cook. We've got a load of it in the freezer. It's lovely. But anyway, they're not easy to carry. They're awkward. And it's a very different experience to going to the gym and squatting a bar.
Yeah.
And when you do that more regularly, you realize that the world we live in is so far away from the world, not the world we should have per se, but the world that our body's designed for. It's debatable what the world should be is a very complicated question, but what our bodies are designed for is quite a simple question, because we kind of basically know that our bodies evolved to be Neolithic people, to be cavemen essentially, and we haven't really evolved since that point. So our body does the same thing, but technology's advanced so quickly that we just don't know. We don't even know the impacts it's having on our body to live the life we're living now. We know some of them, and we can see a lot of them, but we don't know all of them.
Yeah. 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 So what, yeah, like when you're talking about natural movement, what our bodies is made of, what kind of movement is that?
What kind of movement is so I think that it's hard to describe obviously all of them because of the huge array of what would happen in the real world. But like I said, essentially it's what would a human body naturally be doing if they lived as a caveman, most likely a nomadic,
Yeah.
pre-agricultural person.
Yeah.
So on average, they'd be walking something like 15 kilometers a day, which is a lot. It's practically impossible for us to walk 15 kilometers a day unless you've got maybe a treadmill desk and you're walking a treadmill all day. But that's a lot of kilometers to walk in a single day.
That's a lot. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
That's a lot. And that's how far they walked every day. Again, I don't think that's really possible for everyone to live like that, but it's about trying to find the middle ground, which is going to be good enough.
Yeah.
But it's not only walking, it's walking on uneven terrain. There were no roads. There was no concrete. It was all soft. It was all potentially wet. It was all potentially slippery. It was all up and down. You were pushing your way through bushes. So again, I realized that is basically impossible to do in the world we live in now, or at least to do it all the time. But it's about trying to find the balance. So even if you're just going for a walk, trying to get off the path onto even just a slightly more difficult path, even if it's just a bit muddy or a bit slippery or a bit rocky, as opposed to staying on the asphalt path that is laid down in front of you. Exactly. And for instance, when you're lifting things, to recognize that naturally you would put things on one shoulder or the other shoulder. You might put things over, but things aren't designed really to be placed here. It doesn't work in normal life. You can't. It'd be great if it was, but most things aren't designed for you to just be able to balance perfectly here. So you'd either put it on one shoulder or the other, or what you see obviously in a lot of I suppose a lot more third world countries, still you see it a lot more commonly, head. They carry things on their head, which again is a very natural and normal way to carry things, but we just don't do it anymore in the Western world very much. So I think I always struggle to try and clarify how can people do this in real life. And I think this is basically the whole thing that I'm trying to work out. That's my whole thing, is trying to work out how do you get people, to enjoy themselves, because I think that's the first barrier. If people don't enjoy what they're doing, they're just not going to do it, or they're going to feel forced to.
Yeah, it's like doing when you're having fun and really like doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first barrier. And the second barrier is then how do we do it in such a way that people will actually get the best out of it?
Yeah.
And I think that I don't want to say the only way, but the only way is to actively try to find things that are difficult and potentially complicated to do. So, like I said, you have to go out of your way to go off the path, even if that's difficult for you sometimes. You have to, for instance, because I do parkour, when I'm outside, I very often will climb over a fence instead of go through a gate, or I'll walk on a wall and so balance along. And you do look a bit like a crazy person. I'm not going to pretend you don't, because even I feel a bit awkward doing it sometimes, but it does change the way that you interact with the world, and it does change the way that your body gets to move on a daily basis.
Yeah. Just when you said like you walk on a wall, I was like, because I can remember as a child I was always going like on the walls and on the
Well, why wouldn't you? Because as a child you're not stuck by the embarrassment that adults are you?
Yeah, exactly.
You're completely free from all of that cultural brainwashing, essentially, into like, oh, you can't walk on a wall, you're a child, of course you can walk on a wall.
Yeah. So yes, next time I see a wall, I'm going to walk over. Yeah. So is it also like, because we're talking about moving outside now, is like a lot of the movement practice that you do, is that movement in nature, because you already have more like that variation in your movement without having to do anything for it?
I think if possible, nature is best, but I also recognize that it's not always possible.
Mm.
And that's where sometimes you do just have to realize that it is a simulacrum and you just have to do the best with what you've got.
Yeah.
You can, okay, let's use an example, which I'm not going to endorse people do per se, but say you went to the gym and say on one side of the bar, you put 5 kilograms more than on the other side of the bar.
Yeah.
That is introducing some level of
variation,
imbalance and variation in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't endorse that myself because it's obviously people get weird about stuff that you do at the gym, and it's also down to the gym's rules, and it's down to you to make that decision yourself. But that is the kind of thing that I sometimes do myself. When I had a gym subscription, which I do use the gym, when not at the moment, obviously, but in general, I do use a gym because sometimes it is the most practical thing to do. It's about trying to find the ways to improve variation and do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do in the setup as it's designed already.
Create variation in whatever you're doing.
Exactly.
And when you do like move in nature, besides you have that variation in the ground, and you have you have already that much more. But is it also, I can imagine that it's also different moving in nature because there is a lot more going on than just your environment, like that you're moving on, but also your senses are a lot more activated. You hear more, you smell more, you see more, that's also a really different kind of experience.
Massively so. And I think that nature is something that humans are lacking in real life. I mean, you've at least got some plants. I haven't got any plants in the background, but I have got plants in this room. And it's really important. And it's crazy the amount of, because I read quite a lot of studies, it's crazy the amount of studies that basically say you need nature. It's not nature is good for you. It's, sorry, I'm just going to move this up there. You need nature. You essentially, you have to have it. It's not even it'd be good for you if you could spend time in nature. It's almost that it is part of what we need in so many ways, that if you're not getting nature regularly, then you are missing out on a lot of what it is to be human. And the studies back that up. People that spend time in nature are healthier and happier, almost across the board, almost in every situation, even to the point where hospital recovery can be sped up if you have a view of nature from your window instead of a view of the urban world. Literally, you don't have to be there. You just have to be able to see it. And it means that you're more likely to have a better recovery.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's insane the level at which we need it and the level of which we've taken it away.
Yeah. That's an interesting extra.
And I think obviously there's too much to talk about as far as that goes in the time we've got, but it is so important that people try to get outside as much as possible, especially at the moment, even if you can't do it with other people, to get outside and to get out of your house and to be outside and do things.
And in that, speaking in that area, we move around on shoes most of the time. And since I think 2 years, I noticed that when it's like not when it's no winter because it's too cold in winter, but in the summertime I try to take off my shoes more often, even if I'm just walking a little walk around my neighborhood, to walk bare feet and to in that way connect more with the nature and ground. And
it does make a difference, doesn't it? It makes such a big difference. And there's the practical difference. So I'll quickly run through them, but they're kind of the more boring reasons. When you can actually feel the texture of the ground, so you can feel if it's slippery or if it's grippy. You can feel the temperature of the ground, which actually helps your body regulate its temperature when it can feel the temperature of the ground below it. Your joints in your foot, I mean, obviously a hand isn't a foot, but it's very similar. The joints in your foot and the bones in your foot do move around like this, but when they're in a shoe, they're held solid. So people's feet end up very stiff. But if you walk barefoot more often, you end up with a lot more variation in the bones, and they're a lot more flexible, movable. And in the end, what's interesting about the foot, and it's a very big topic, but the interesting thing about the foot is that because it's the way you interact with the world a lot of the time, if there's something wrong with the foot, it can lead to lots of damage. They call it up the chain. So if your foot doesn't move properly, essentially, if your foot can't absorb the impact of you walking properly or jumping or doing whatever, then your knee will take the impact, or your hip will take the impact, or your back.
Yeah.
And it all feeds all the way up. So if you have a problem at the bottom, it affects everything on the way up. Like if you had a flat tire on a car, it's going to make the handling go wonky. In the end, it's going to wear parts out. It's going to mess up everything just because you've got one flat tire. But if you've got a stiff big toe that doesn't move very much, that will do the same thing to your body. But then from the less practical perspective, I actually yesterday had my first proper barefoot walk this year, because it was kind of starting to warm up, and then England decided to, I don't know if it's the same in the Netherlands, but decided to go mental and snow, which it barely ever snows in England to the degree that we get it.
A week ago it was snowing here, it was freezing, people were ice skating, and yesterday it was like a different, I think it was 20 degrees.
20? Oh.
20 degrees. Yeah, it was 15 degrees, but it was like a 20 degrees difference with a week ago.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, 20 degrees different, yeah. I don't think it's quite as cold here, but we don't get much snow in England, especially in the southeast. So it was like a shock that we had such an amount of snow that actually hung around for a whole week. So then it got really cold. And then again, yesterday, it was, like I said, like 12 degrees, 13 degrees. Like, oh, I can be outside and take my shoes off. And it just reminded me of how connected I feel. And I sometimes feel that I try to not be too woo-woo about it and be like, oh, I'm so connected to I'm grounded and I feel so connected. But at the same time, I just feel good. So then at the same time, where does that come from? I feel good when I have my shoes off. I feel better. I feel more connected to the world. If it feels to me like I suddenly gain an extra sense. Like I've got my normal 5 senses and I take my shoes off and it feels like I've got this whole new, like seeing a new color. It's an amazing feeling, and people think you're weird. But then when they do it, they get it. But it looks weird and it seems weird. But it's really, but it's definitely not. Again, we go back to the example of our ancestors. They didn't have shoes. Shoes didn't exist. Shoes aren't real. Well, they are real, but they weren't real.
No, and it feels like after I've done that, I feel like my whole feet are tingly and alive. I feel so, and you can literally feel like the energy moving through the feet. So it feels really good. And I think because I would like to talk a little bit more about and I think this one matches really with that. Like we started off, you mentioned something that you felt like you were a head on a stick.
Head on a stick.
Yes. And so that's also, I think, the main difference of the way of movement that I would like to see more people doing, you, I think, as well, that it's more connected with your whole body and not using your body as a machine to move something around or to move away.
Well, if you think about it in that sense, I kind of think of it like people that just go to the gym and just do whatever the machine does, they're a body on a stick. They're not using their brain. Their brain is separated and it's just a body. There's nothing going on. It's just their body going. And then there's the other people that are very philosophical, very connected to their emotions, but then their body's never used. Like they just sit like the thinker, just like that all day long. And that they might as well not have a body. It'd be easier for them if they didn't have to worry about the health of their body. They could just contemplate the universe all day. But then it's just trying to find the balance. It's trying to find the balance between using your mind and thinking about what you're doing and using your body and making sure you get the most out of it. And actually a lot of some of the greatest philosophers throughout history basically say you have to go outside, you have to be in nature. And a lot of them set going for a long walk every day as part of their philosophical musings, essentially. Like, I'm going to go spend 2 hours walking and then I'll come back and write. And I think even they realized that it was causing them a problem to just sit around in a dark, dingy study all day, writing whatever they write, whatever their philosophical musings are.
So yes,
I think it's an interesting concept
yeah,
that
yeah,
people have just become a head on a stick or a body on a stick.
yeah, 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 and especially in these times, really like try to get out and move your body in, yeah, in any way that is possible for you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All right. So we are approaching the end of
we
our
are.
time. So if there's anything you, if there's like a last thing that you want to share about, or that you say like, oh, this is really something that I want to mention.
Hmm. Give me a
Or
moment. Let me just think if there is anything that I feel like. I mean, there's a million things I'd like to talk
yeah,
about, but is there anything in particular I'd like to talk about?
like, yeah.
Um, I think the only thing that I'd like to talk about finally is that this is more going out to anyone that's watching this that's younger.
Yeah.
That I'm fairly young myself, but that essentially you can't live off of what you've got now
Mm,
forever. As far as your body goes, you can't rely on the health you have now to last until later in your life. And eventually, if you treat your body badly, it will catch up to you.
mm,
And it's the unfortunate state of living in the material realm that you have a body that you do have to do something with. Otherwise, eventually you'll start having problems. And I kind of feel like I try to avoid talking about COVID too much, but this year has shown that in that one of the major problems we've had with COVID is that sheer vast quantity of incredibly unhealthy people,
mm,
because COVID would have been nowhere near as bad
mhm,
if there was much lower levels of obesity and bad health. And they have massively they've created a massive problem out of something that isn't anywhere near as bad as it should be
yeah,
if we lived in a healthy society.
yeah,
And that's mainly due to people that live their whole life. I don't say mainly, I'm not going to try to blame anyone, but lots of people that live their whole life just feeling all right, feeling all right, feeling all right. And then they get to their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and then their body starts to fall apart on them because they haven't treated it like something that deserves to be treated well.
mm,
And
yeah,
I think there's a good phrase, which is essentially treat your body as if you had control over someone else's life and what they ate and what the exercise they did, you would get them to be really healthy. But then with your own body, you don't. So
mm,
treat your body and your mind as though it was someone you were trying to help,
yeah,
because you've only got one body.
yeah, yeah,
And sometimes you don't get a choice with health issues, but
mm,
sometimes you do.
yeah,
And you can stack the deck in your favor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So uh, keeping yourself fit, or at least moving your body,
Mm.
that's a form of self love and self care.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, wonderful. So I think we're going to finish our talk with that. And so I
Yeah.
really want to thank you for being here, for joining the
Oh,
summit and sharing all your thoughts and inspiration.
thank you for having me. Thank you for
Yeah,
inviting me. It's been
yeah,
lovely.
you're very welcome. All right.